We're very pleased to welcome State Senator Dick Saslaw live from Richmond this morning. Go ahead, John.
Okay, fantastic. It is always a pleasure to have you on. Senator Saslaw, Minority Leader of the State Senate in Virginia. Thanks for joining us. I want to get right to it. The kind of 11th hour midnight legislation that was passed by the Republicans, 20-19, on Monday evening, took everybody by surprise. It's called the redistricting bill. Even took Governor McDonnell by surprise. Senator Saslaw, what exactly went down there?
Well, they had carried the bill over on the calendar, which is essentially all your bills that you're going to deal with that day. Every day they got up at the very beginning of the session and said let it go by for the day. What they were waiting for, and let me back up. Senator Norman and one other senator had assured Don McEachin last November that if they did anything in the redistricting area, they would give him advance notice. He was lied to, and they held this thing all the way to waited for Henry to go. Marsh went up to see the president sworn in, and all of a sudden they sprung it on us. When I did the redistricting in 2011, we had 22, they had 18. With the exception of 4 of their 18 senators, I went to every single Republican senator, and if they weren't satisfied with their district, we fixed it. They got virtually everything they wanted, and not one single Republican senator had a district that wasn't either as good as what he currently had, or she had, or better. That's not the case what they did. They gutted about 7 or 8 senators' districts to make them heavily Republican. And but the worst part of it, and the other thing was, our plan was on the internet for days. We went around the state with it, got public comment on it, and they didn't do any of this. But the worst part was they lied to Don McEachin, to Senator McEachin.
Would you say that this was a wholly partisan effort in order to redraw a few districts?
What they've been unable to do at the ballot box, they're trying to do with a pencil.
Now, what about the fact that it was done, Senator Saslaw, that it was done where one of your colleagues, one of your Democratic Senate colleagues, was not in that day, was not in session that day?
They waited for that because on a 2020 tie vote, the lieutenant governor, who was a Republican, was not going to vote with them.
Right.
Because he thought what they were doing was wrong.
Right.
And the other thing is, it's probably unconstitutional because in 2004, when we amended that part of the Constitution, it said the General Assembly shall redistrict itself in 2011 and every 10 years thereafter. It didn't say in 2011 and whenever else you feel like it.
We had the lieutenant governor on our show, a senator, on yesterday, and he was very clear in saying that, had he been the tie-breaking vote behind it, he would have voted it down. The other thing that he said I want to get your comment on is Lieutenant Governor Bowling said that one of the reasons he was against this is because it set a very dangerous precedent going forward. How do you react to that?
Well, he's right. I mean, if we were to get back in control in 2000 or next year by having 2020, which is what it is now, and a Democratic lieutenant governor, this thing's going to go back and forth. There's no stability of the Senate districts because in the manner they did it, they've got precincts in my district that don't exist anymore.
From what you're saying, Senator Saslaw, is that basically the leadership of the GOP waited for one of your colleagues not to be there. They knew the lieutenant governor was not behind it, so as soon as they saw the opening, they pounced.
That's correct. Aside from the process thing, they lied to one of our members. And once you do that to me or to one of my colleagues, I'm pretty much done with you.
Why do you think they did that?
Why did they lie to him?
Yeah.
Because they never alerted him, like they said they were going to. That's why they lied.
And the objective in your
view, obviously, if they'd have told him, Henry Marsh wouldn't have gone there.
What you're saying is if they were candid, then
it would have been 2020, and the lieutenant governor would have voted against it.
Right. So the incentive to not be forthright and forthcoming with it was to wait for the opening when they could win 20-19.
Yeah, obviously. They knew that he was going up to see the inauguration, and that's when they sprung it.
Common Sense News Time coming up on 7:53 here on the John Fredericks Show. Steve Ray, the editorial director in the nation's capital, with John Fredericks in Virginia Beach this morning. We're speaking with State Senator Dick Saslaw live from Richmond. Senator, I would ask about your statements that you now, because of this action, would be threatening to hold up any transportation bill or any other main pieces of legislation. Can you clarify that for us, sir?
No, you described it pretty accurately. If they're going to pull a stunt like this, a lot of people aren't going to get what they wanted. And, in fact, if you remember last year, we had this fight over the budget, and the newspapers didn't support us. Okay, this time, 2 of the 4 papers said the Democrats have every right to torpedo this, and if this thing is not done away with, if it doesn't vanish, then there's not going to be any votes to do any of this stuff. If they're going to pull a stunt like this, we're going to react.
And how do you think the reaction will be from the electorate who is so desperately in need of some transportation reform?
My emails have been telling me don't help them out one bit, and phone calls as well.
Is it helping out the Republican conference, or is it helping the state of Virginia when we've got a transportation?
We got a terrible transportation problem, but they didn't think about. They should have thought about that before they pulled a stunt like this, because there's no Democrat that's going to vote to repeal the gas tax, which is in the governor's bill anyway,
right,
or take general fund money. So it wouldn't have passed anyway. Okay, it would not. Let me repeat that. Even if this hadn't happened, that wouldn't have passed anyway.
And any other major pieces of legislation, will you be holding that up as well, sir?
We're going to have to take a look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you came under immediate attack, Senator, yesterday. One of the Republican candidates running for Lieutenant Governor, businessman, and entrepreneur, Pete Snyder, said that you basically pulled a temper tantrum, that you were holding the progress of the state hostage, and he also launched a radio ad today, I believe, attacking you on this. How do you respond to that?
Who is Pete Snyder?
Candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia on the GOP side.
Oh, never heard of him. I mean, I'm really not concerned about some nut job running a radio ad, whose knowledge of this state can probably be put in a 1-ounce shot glass with half of it empty still.
So it sounds like you're not particularly swayed by.
I've never heard of this guy. You sure he's running for office in Virginia?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor.
What's his name?
Pete Snyder. He's a candidate for Lieutenant Governor.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, well,
Where's he live?
You have it there, Northern Virginia.
No. I've been there. I've been in Northern Virginia 45 years. I've never heard of the guy.
Okay, so get back to transportation. We've got about a couple more minutes.
And by the way, I put in a transportation bill.
What is it?
It takes the gas. It does what should be done. Takes the gas tax up a nickel, and this year, a nickel next year. Okay. And then it indexes it to the construction index, okay, construction price index. All right, that'll raise $500 million a year. Then I take the sales tax up 1%, with half of it going to transportation and half of it going to education. Okay, the 0.5% going to the transportation trust fund adds another $500 million for $1.1 billion. I've indexed, like I said, the gas tax. The governor's plan by 2018 or 19 produces about $500 million a year. Mine produces $1.1 billion. It also goes a long way to solving our underfunded public schools, which our budget for public schools now is back to where it was in 2007. Only we got a lot more students now than we had in 2007. We're 38th in America in how we fund public education. We're the 7th wealthiest state on a per capita basis. We're 38th on how we fund public schools, and we're 48th in how we fund higher ed and the money we give to higher education. Thank God for Alabama and Mississippi.
Well, there you go. That is State Senator Dick Saslaw appearing live from Richmond as John Fredericks is in Virginia Beach this morning. And we thank you, sir, for taking time out of a very busy morning legislatively to appear with John. We thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
On the show in the last hour, The state Senate Minority Leader Dick Saslaw said these very words. He said, quote, "You think I'm actually concerned about some nut job whose knowledge about this state could be put in a 1-ounce shot glass and still have plenty of room left over." Repeating the quote he had for the Washington Post yesterday. And joining John on the line right now is the man who was targeted by that attack, Pete Snyder, who is running for lieutenant governor. John, take it away.
Pete, great to have you with us. Thanks for coming on short notice. Dick Saslaw just on, Minority Leader of the Senate, as Steve said. We asked him about the comments that you made criticizing him for what you called his temper tantrum in relation to the Republicans passing the redistricting bill at the 11th hour. He felt he was lied to, but then he also said, Pete, that you didn't know who you were, never heard of you, and said that he's been in Northern Virginia his whole life and didn't know who Pete Snyder was from Adam's cat. How do you respond to that?
Well, John, I think it's sad. And this is the very reason why so many people are disgusted with what's happening in Washington, what's happening with Richmond, and what's happening really with the reign of career politicians. I mean, you talk about it all the time on your show that the status quo as it is has to change. I find it interesting that career politicians like Dick Saslaw say that they don't know me. Dick Saslaw has actually tried to solicit money from me before. So, like most career politicians, I'm sure he asks everyone and their brother to try to shake them down for campaign contributions. So he targeted me several years ago, and of course, being a good conservative who would never support a tax raiser like Saslaw, I said absolutely not. But I got to tell you, John, it's so jarring to see issues like transportation being thrown by the wayside and progress being thrown by the wayside because of petty politics and temper tantrums from career politicians like Dick Saslaw. Look, I do not believe, as a job creator, in this economy that makes any sense for us to be raising taxes on Virginia families. But that does not mean that we can't find a sensible solution to move forward on transportation. And this is the very reason why politics in Richmond and Washington have become so toxic. If the first knee-jerk reaction from someone who's supposed to be a leader is name-calling and taking their ball and going home, it is clearly time for a change. And as an outsider, John, I want to shake things up in Richmond and get rid of career pols like Dick Saslaw.
Well, Pete, we did ask him that I asked him point blank if it was really in the best interest of the citizens in the state to hold transportation hostage because of a dispute that he's got with the Republican conference. Regardless of what they did, I'm not sure that one hand has anything to do with the other. But what Dick Saslaw said was that the governor's transportation bill was dead on arrival anyway, and so it didn't matter. But on the same breath, he said that he was going to probably be inclined to hold up other legislation in retaliation for what the state Senate did. So that was kind of a dual answer there.
And what do you expect out of career politicians? Dual answers, talking out of both sides of their mouth. This is, I haven't seen a political temper tantrum of this proportion since Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton got at it, and I guess Newt threatened to hold up the budget because he was put on the back end of Air Force One,
right.
15 years ago. Dick Saslaw, it's time. His solution to everything is raising taxes and just politics as usual. Virginia families and Virginia taxpayers want real results. They want common sense solutions that don't include hiking their taxes. They want their leaders to actually do the work and not name call and take their ball and go home. It's time for change, John.
Pete, we got about one more minute. I do want you to weigh in. I know we asked you this when you were on the show on Tuesday, and you said that kind of commented on it but didn't really give us an answer. I'm just going to ask you point blank. Do you think what the Republicans did in passing this redistricting for the Senate, which basically they waited until one Democratic Senate colleague was not going to be there. He was at the inauguration. And then they put this thing down, didn't tell anybody. because they knew that they had a full House. Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling would have voted it down. I mean, do you think that was fair play?
Well, but by the Senate rules, sure, it was. That said, John, that situation, if I were Lieutenant Governor, would never exist. You know what? The Senate Republicans felt that they had to do that because they no longer trusted, they no longer trusted what was happening, or their relationship with the Lieutenant Governor is so damaged these days that they wanted to make sure that they could get a conservative reform agenda on education, on transportation, on things that actually matter through. And that's it. You know, I urge the General Assembly to produce some real results, conservative results on issues that matter. I applaud them for what's happening on education. We're making some great strides there. There's more to do. But Dick Saslaw and the career Pauls cannot hijack progress on transportation. And if they do, trust me, in 2013, they are going to pay a price, and I'm going to make sure that happens.
Okay, Pete, we're out of time. We were with Pete Snyder, entrepreneur, businessman from Northern Virginia. He is a candidate for the Republican nomination for Lieutenant Governor. That nomination will be settled in a Republican state convention May 18th in Richmond. Hey, Pete, we want to thank you for coming on, especially being available on, I guess, about 5 minutes notice. Thank you.
Hey, John, thanks for keeping everyone honest, and thanks for shining a light onto the nuttiness that's happening in Richmond with crazy career politicians like Dick Saslaw. Keep it going.